Hello, my name is Kevin Corwin, and I am one of the co-founders of the InScope program and project management software platform. And I want to give you a little introduction to InScope and give you an overview of the product as well as some background. I also want to tell you about some of the solutions that InScope provides and the specific way in which it provides them. And lastly, I want to give you a plan that would get you started and help you get your projects in scope. So with that, let's take a look at InScope. InScope is a SaaS, a software as a service product and company that was founded by myself and Mark Meyer back in 2020. It is a program and project management software that is built, as we like to say, the way professionals think. And who do we mean by professionals? Well, that can be anybody who's working inside in a professional environment and managing professional types of projects. So a variety of users that can leverage InScope for professional project management. And InScope's purpose is to be program and project centric. We wanted a product that was easy, fast, and familiar. It was built the way people build their spreadsheets out. We wanted something that was instant and connected, but that was also comprehensive and complete in the functionality it provided and insightful. And lastly, we wanted InScope to be accessible to any size agency or company because it can be affordable for them as well and scaled to different levels. What we found as we surveyed most of the products on the market, the existing features are too inefficient across multiple platforms such as Microsoft Project or Monday or Trello or even more robust project management tools like Deltek or BQE Core. Menus and screens are isolated. They're separated from each other. You navigate to different areas to manage your budget than you do your schedule. That requires multiple clicks and multiple manual selections and actions and specialized reports to pull everything together. So in essence, there's limited opportunity for users to comprehend and control the fundamentals of projects, scopes, schedules, finances, and resources efficiently, even on one screen. And you'll notice the difference when you look at the project screen inside of InScope. For example, down the left-hand side of the project screen is the scope of work. It is organized vertically. This is consistent across many platforms where you break down the scope of work into various levels of detail, and it is organized and stacked vertically. The difference is most platforms do not offer resource management horizontally, and most professionals build their spreadsheets in this manner. This scope resource matrix allows the allocation of effort that a resource will spend on scope to occur at the intersection of the scope of work that resource is going to perform and the resources column. The resulting costs are then simply derived from that resource's rate at the effort that they will be expending. From there, it's merely one click into the Gantt tool where standard project scheduling may be performed. With the schedule available, I now have the ability to comprehend and control all scopes, schedules, finances, and resources across all of my projects. Now, the reason that most platforms do not offer scope, resources, and finances to be viewed on one screen is simply because it's a lot of data. So that's why most platforms end up isolating this information, requiring multiple clicks and multiple navigations. Instead, InScope has solved this issue with a simple tool we call the socket. In the same way that scope is expanded vertically, detailed project information about resources and costs can be expanded or contracted horizontally. This also allows InScope to be spanned across multiple screens. And the reason Mark Meyer and I wanted to bring InScope into the world was because we are founders who have felt the pain. We are both consultants. We've both been running our firms for multiple years, but we saw such a lack of basic project management within the tools that were available. So we built a platform that would meet the core needs of project management from our years of project management experience. Now, a platform is only as good as the solutions that it provides. So let's take a look at the realities that all professional firms face. The first reality that every firm faces is that maximizing talent means minimizing inefficiency. Just think about the most expensive investment that you make as a business. It's going to be your people, right? Your talent. That's what you're investing in. So just think about the old game, would you rather? I think all of us would agree we would rather have our talent spending their time more like the graph on the right than on the left. Well, InScope can help with this because all of your project information is consolidated into one platform. As you can see here, if we go inside of InScope, we have that scope of work broken down the left-hand side. And I can add any level of detail. I can indent, I can outdent, I can do all of the work breakdown that I would need to do. But when it comes to allocating my resource time, you see here I have a project lead billing out at $150 an hour. So I can simply change the value and the hours that potential resource might be spending on a particular scope of work. And I can continue to move through here, and simply by arrowing from one cell to another, I can then enter the values that pertain to a particular resource. It's super fast and super easy to allocate resource hours in this way. And you can see that it's building my budget exactly as I go. If I want to toggle between hours and costs, I can do that simply by clicking on this pill up here. And I can also directly enter costs, which will of course back calculate my hours. All of these costs that you see generating on the screen are driven by a rate table. And this rate table, although derived from the system settings at a company level for all your various resource rates, and that includes all kinds of resources, not just personnel, but it could include equipment or expenses. All of these are driven off of these rate tables, and you'll see here this is a custom rate table. And the reason for that is because some projects require different rates, as we all know. So you can see how fast it is to move around within the InScope screen. I'm actually building a budget here. I also have actual and remaining information, which I'll talk about in just a minute. Here I can also add, I remember I mentioned those expenses. So let's say that I had an expense that I wanted to add. Perhaps I was traveling. I can add in another budget column that are related to the expenses. Now if I expand this socket, I can now allocate these airfare dollars for travel on this particular scope element. We estimate that this interaction, this interface, versus other platforms where you have to click and click and click in order to get to different resource allocations on different scope elements, is about 30 times faster. So think about that across all of your people and all of your projects, how much faster this interaction is. But it's not just the interactions on the screen that makes InScope better, it's also the interconnectedness of the data. Here you'll see our standard Gantt functionality. Works like many other Gantt products on the market. I can make links, I can make changes, I can lengthen tasks, I can do different scheduling, I can do finish to starts, I can do everything the standard scheduling program would typically do. But the big difference you'll see is the same scope of work that I'm scheduling and the same task that I'm scheduling is also the exact same scope of work as my finances are being driven from. In this way, we have now created a seamless connection between the scope of work and the resource allocation and the financial information, as well as the scheduled information. So now looking at this information comprehensively is instant and connected. If I change one aspect of the project, the schedule for example, it's instantly reflected in that schedule's connection to its financial information or resource allocation information. I can also come over here and I can see the schedule information from within this screen. The other way that InScope is instant and connected is with the actual data. Imagine the actual information that I might expend, the actual hours, the actual costs that might be incurred. Let's imagine this scope element right here, 2.2 on project 21007. If I go to my timesheet and I look for project 21007, you can see I can instantly filter down to that particular project. Then I can go to 2.2 as well. There are different activity codes that are available for me to select. And if I had other categories that I was assigned to on a particular project, I could select a different billing category even though I'm the same resource charging to it. Here I'm going to add 2 hours to this particular scope on this particular project. Now if I navigate back to that project and I look at 21007 and I look at that particular scope element that did not have hours before, I now have 2 hours charged to that. If I reverse that, if for some reason there was a problem with my timesheet and I reverse that, this 2-hour allocation would immediately go away. So in that sense, the data is connected, it's seamless. And because it's seamless, I have constant insight into the state of my projects. And let's look at one other example. Imagine I subcontracted part of the work. I was working with a particular vendor. Here you can see I'm working with Englert Consulting. And they have also billed $2,000 on a particular scope element. Managing subcontracts is as easy as a click. I move over to the subs area to where I've actually subbed a particular subcontract, and here it has opened up the Englert Consulting contract that I just saw. Here you see my project 21007 and that bill that has been entered for $2,000. Of course, if I had another bill, I would simply add a bill here and allocate it to the particular scope element. You'll also notice that this contract goes across multiple projects. So I can have one contract that's working on the scope of 2 different projects. This is a very labor-intensive issue in most other platforms, and InScope has solved it with a very simple relationship. So as we've said, by our tests, by our comparisons, we have found that InScope is about 30 times faster in terms of navigation and instantly related data than virtually any other platform on the planet. So let's return to the other aspect of that maximizing talent reality that all firms face. Think about another would you rather comparison. Would you rather guess and react to what's being done or what has to be done or when things are due all the time while trying to avoid burnout of your personnel or determining if they can get everything done that needs to be done, versus being able to monitor and control this instantaneously, to know when people are doing it and to know if everything is getting done. InScope makes that a snap simply by going to the workloads area. So remember, I gave that explanation of instantly connected data between the scope of work, the resources that are performing it, the financial implications, and the schedule. Well, when I have those 4 components instantaneously tied, I can simply navigate to the workloads area and I can see essentially a pivot of my project information. I can zoom out to look at a different density, and I can look at each resource and all of the projects and all of the scope elements that that resource is being allocated to and the time frame in which they're being allocated within one simple screen. Now, something unique about the InScope Workloads workspace is that forecast hours are being used for the resource allocations. That is, how many hours are forecasted to remain for the work for a particular scope. Now, because work cannot happen in the past, forecast hours are automatically advanced from today's date forward until a particular scope element reaches its end. So you can see this one here is in the past, but it also flags it, turning it red, indicating that remaining forecasted hours have compiled on the last available day of that particular scope element. When I look at the totals by resource, I can see resources that are over allocated depending on what they are assigned to in a given time frame. And the resource scheduling within workloads works as a worksheet. So I can actually change the span of a particular resource's assignment on a particular task, and I can see what the impact is in comparison with the schedule. So the project schedule can be toggled on and off to tell me exactly where my resource workloads show up in relation to the project schedule. So as you can see, Workloads is an immensely powerful tool when it comes to resource management, and again, it functions so well because of that interrelated data that we've already discussed. Now, returning to this idea of maximizing talent, you can see how much better InScope performs when it comes to monitoring and controlling the work to be done. And lastly, think about all of the time that resources spend or personnel spend just simply even looking for information, let alone trying to control it. Studies show that the average worker will spend 1 to 2 hours per week. And imagine, based on bill rates or payment rates, you're looking at $100 to $200 per worker per week, compared with InScope at only $6 per worker per week at its current pricing. The second reality that all firms are going to face is client satisfaction. Our businesses are projects-driven businesses, and the key to client satisfaction is simply saying what you will do and doing what you will say. Think about your current system. How would you answer these questions with the current tools or the current system that you have in place? Is work easy to plan? Is it easy to view? Is it easy to track? And is it easy to adjust? If the answer to any of these is no, then your current system is not giving you what you need when it comes to assuring client satisfaction. Let's take a look at how InScope handles this. I'm going to return to the project's overview area. And there are particular tools, especially in the details area, that have been built into InScope to make managing multi-projects and multi-scopes very seamless. Once again, you can see the percentage of work complete shows up immediately for every project. So just by a quick scan, I can understand exactly where the percentage complete of every project is. If I were to open any of these projects, I can see the detailed scope that we looked at earlier simply by scanning down, and once again I can see the work completed within scope. So I can look at multiple project scopes at one time. A special tool that we've built into InScope is called a to-do list. Now, a to-do list is simply that. It is a list of to-dos that is associated with each scope element. As I open up a to-do, I can create new to-do items, such as maybe scheduling a client meeting or calling a permitting agency, or more minute tasks that I know have to be done that are related to a scope of work, but not something that I'm going to build a schedule around or assign resource hours to. It's more of a reminder of something that needs to be done. And here you can see by default the due date that is populated. If I just simply added another to-do item here, the due date that is populated is automatically the date that is assigned to that particular scope element. But I can also assign a different date to that to-do item, if whether that be in the past or in the future, and assign it as well as add other periphery information. You can also see there are some alerts associated with this to-do item, and I can actually change the settings for when it alerts me from a yellow flag to a red flag within the system settings. Now imagine needing to adjust work. That is a common practice among any consultant or any professional. Because work changes, projects elaborate, you find out more information as they progress. So let's just imagine that I had additional work that needed to be done. Here I'm going to add a new scope element, and I'm going to identify this as additional work. Now I have a child element of this parent element that is now additional work. It's different than the original scope of work. But when I did that, in most programs, what you typically see is this parent element becomes a summation of all of its children. I don't have the ability to add any inherent value to this. Well, you can see this 10 hours that was on this original scope of work, this original parent item, has been preserved because parents inside of InScope carry their own inherent value, and there is a summation value for each parent as well. So in that way, I can preserve all of the original planned work. And here InScope is reminding me that I'm updating the budget of an active project, which is another handy feature built into InScope. But here you can see I've added now more hours for this additional work and preserved my original budget as well. I didn't have to do any elaborate concoction of relationships or other projects in order to simply capture that work. So once again, work is easy to track and adjust on the fly. I can open up that details view that I just had on the other screen, on my project's overview screen, for an individual project as well. And you can see I have a number of fields available to me. I can assign multiple programs to a particular scope element. Even though the project is part of one program, I can make scope elements and other departments or other teams responsible for aspects of the work. I can also give a status. I can give a work percentage complete. I can also control the chargeability of work, which is particularly useful when scope is reaching its maximum capacity and I need to control the activity on that particular scope of work. I also have a number of other tools available, including agile scores, notes, and narratives that I can add to any scope of work. So in this way, you can truly see that assigning responsibilities, assigning accountability, receiving notifications and visual assessments of the work happens very seamlessly inside of InScope. So when it comes to InScope, yes, work is easy to plan, it's easy to view, it's easy to track, and it's easy to adjust on the fly, which is a key to client satisfaction. Another reality that every business, every firm is going to face is that projects must make more than they take. In other words, how your projects are performing, whether they're profitable, determines how your business overall is performing. So a project management system needs to provide the financial condition of any or all projects in near real time. It also needs to provide the financial trajectory. What is the course of any or all projects in real time? And lastly, what is the financial opportunity of any new or potential projects or pursuits? All of this needs to happen in real time. Let's take a look at the financial model of InScope to understand exactly how InScope is going to help us solve this problem. To start with, I'm going to turn off my details socket, which actually illustrates how easy it is to leverage the sockets inside of InScope. They can actually be rearranged in different orders as well. And now you'll see my primary financial sockets I have remaining are a budget, an actual, a remaining, and a forecast. So InScope uses a very simple financial model, and what this provides is consistency across all of your projects and a basic understanding of the financial performance of your projects. So the budget is simply that. That is the budget that has been approved, usually with a client at the agreed upon fee, but it can also be simply your internal budget for a particular project. And here again, you can see I can look at my personnel, equipment, expenses, or subcontracts that comprise my budget. Now the budget is just that. It is the budget for a given project. Once my actuals begin to impact my project, they deduct from my budget. So as timesheets, expenses, or subs are entered in, these values end up detracting from or removing themselves from the budget. So then what remains after budget is the remaining. And remaining is simply that, the calculated budget that remains, which is the budget value minus the actual value. It is a simple equation that results in the remaining. So the remaining is always calculated. However, just because you have a certain value remaining on a particular scope of work, on a particular project, does not mean that that is what it will take to finish that work. So that's where the magic of the forecast comes in. So the forecast allows users to do just that, to forecast how much they believe remains on a particular scope element. So even though $3,350 remain on this particular scope element, my predictions are that we're going to run slightly over. That's what my project managers are telling me. So when I can go to the forecast hours, I can actually adjust those hours. I can adjust those hours and workloads as well, and it back calculates and impacts the forecast on a particular scope, on a particular project. But in that way, it gives me the variance. It gives me the trajectory, the financial trajectory of a particular project or a particular scope on a particular project to predict how my project will ultimately perform from an overall standpoint. If I know how my projects are going to perform from an overall standpoint, I can also look at the variance across all of my projects. Variance is just that, the difference between what remains in the budget and the value of the work forecasted to remain. So here you can see I'm anticipating to do quite well in this project where I only have $43,000 worth of forecast to remain, while my actual budget remaining is $68,000. That may also be telling me that I'm leaving too much money on the table with a particular client. Now, you also see some NAs in this column, and that is because I do have some pursuits in here, some projects that are in a pursuit status. And I can see that if I open up my details again and I expand my details, I'll see that these particular projects are in pursuit. So they don't yet have any forecast. So imagine that I wanted to filter those out. I could actually turn off all pursuits in order to see how my overall business is performing. What I want to look at right now, though, is I'm actually going to look at one particular program. Remember, programs are assignments. Those could be teams or groups or departments within your business. And here I'm going to look at my systems program. So see, now I'm looking at only projects that belong to the systems program, or even scope elements if there were individual scope elements assigned on individual projects. And now I can see exactly how my systems program is going to perform by the end of the year, or with the remaining book of work that I currently have scheduled. And so far it's telling me that the systems program is going to perform well. So this is now driving proactivity from a project or even program management standpoint, and I can see how teams or groups are performing. I can see how offices are performing if I'm a multi-office company, and you can also see I can see schedule information off to the right as well. Once I turn those details back on, again, those can be expanded and contracted, and you'll see that I have my work percent complete already shown. So with my work percent complete, I can compare the amount of work that has been completed with the actual cost that has been completed, and also the time elapsed. So if I see big variances like this one where 43% of the work has been completed while only 20% of the work has been charged, yet 78% of the time has elapsed, I don't have much time left in this project, even though I have a fair amount of work left and I have a fair amount of billing left to be done on this project. So as you can see, the InScope financial model is a very powerful tool to understand your business or even the various components of your business. So once again, I'm able to see the financial condition of any or all projects And everything is near real time because everything is interconnected inside of InScope. I can see the financial trajectory as we saw, and I also saw the financial opportunity of all pursuits when I was looking at particular pursuits. Now I want to talk just a bit more about pursuits because that is the fourth reality that all businesses face. And that should be that the work you do must help you win more work. The work should always be informing your new opportunities. It's new experience you're gaining, new lessons that your staff has learned, new efficiencies that you've picked up. InScope is designed to finally take the pain out of pursuing more work. You notice the pursuits that I mentioned earlier, so I could actually look at all the pursuits and only the pursuits that I've actually started to estimate some potential budget that I might receive. I may or may not win all of these pursuits, but I can begin to create them and track them. Now, I may or may not win each of these projects, and because of that, we've added a nifty tool into InScope called the pursuit probability. Using the pursuit probability, I actually have the ability to assign a probability. So maybe I'm one of a few firms being considered for a particular project. I can also assess the number of firms that are being considered. I can assess my relationship with that client, the past experience with that client, and in that way I can add some prediction to the likelihood of this revenue. So while I may not win all my pursuits, I know I'll win some, so the law of averages should allow me to predict what my future book of work is going to be. In addition, one of the most commonly requested pieces of information with new clients is your past experience on work that relates exactly to their particular project or their new opportunity. Using tags inside of InScope, I actually have the ability to tag any project or even any scope of work to describe what that might have entailed or particular skills or particular unique attributes of a project that I performed. Once I tag projects or even tag scopes of work inside of a project, I now have the ability to go and filter and see all of the projects that required that particular skill or that particular expertise. And when I can see all of these projects combined with my schedule information or even my financial performance information, I can very quickly give the client an assessment of the projects in the last 5 years that were very similar to the new opportunity that I'm pursuing with this client. So as you can see right at my fingertips, all of the work that I have performed in the past is now helping me win more work. So now allow me to offer you a plan to get your work and your projects in scope. The first step is simply signing up for a free 30-day trial of InScope. That's right. We give you 30 days to try out InScope, and all we need is an email address. No credit cards, nothing else is required. Invite as many team members as you want to create as many projects as they want during your free 30-day trial. And if you actually send us your users list and 3 test projects, whether those be Excel spreadsheets or Microsoft project files, we will gladly load those for you, load your entire users list, and get you set up to immediately dive in and start using InScope. You can also choose a time for free onboarding. Simply reach out and we'll schedule a time, and you can have as many users join that onboarding as you wish. We will help you get all of your company's system settings in place, all of your users in place, and train your users on the basics of using InScope. You might be thinking it'll take weeks to get all of our users up to speed, but we can assure you InScope is so intuitive that most all of our users are up and running within just a few hours. And we also have a fully searchable knowledge base with various help articles, as well as an embedded chat feature where you can get support live. And during your trial, we will give you all the support you need. You have unlimited calls, emails, chats, or texts, as many requests, as many team members as you have. We want to make sure your InScope experience is excellent. Thank you for taking time to learn about InScope, and we look forward to seeing your entire business get InScope.